was silly at the end there. Hi guys, how you doing? Nick Jennison, Guitar Interactive GI Plus. It's Monday. We're doing the thing that we do on Mondays, which is hang out, talk about the guitar. And today we are continuing our weeks-long discussion on the subject of arpeggios. It's a bit of a thread that's been going through these last few streams. And today we are visiting our old friend the blues. Now, recently we've been a little bit fusion heavy when it comes to the sort of stuff we've been looking at, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We love a bit of that sort of stuff here, but today it's time to take a look at the genre of music that kind of started everything that we're doing here with the electric guitar, which is of course the blues. Now today we're going to be looking at how you can take your arpeggios that we've been discussing, we've been talking about the last few weeks, and apply some of that sort of stuff to your blues improv. We're going to be looking primarily at some dominant blues today, which is the kind of blues that we were listening to in that intro with that fantastic, I think somebody called it a burlesque style blues. We love a bit of that sort of thing. So we're going to be mainly looking at that stuff, but we may touch on some minor blues too, depending upon how we do for time. If not, we can always visit that again next week because, you know, there's room for all that sort of stuff. But before we go any further, I just want to take a quick second and say, hey, how you doing? Great to have you on board. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are a new viewer, thanks for coming on board. Thanks for taking a chance with our live streams. We think you're going to get some really good stuff out of the things that we're going to teach you today. Also, if you're one of our returning streamers, it is lovely to have you back. Again, I say this every week, be really lonely without you. So I'm very glad that you guys were here, or the guys are here rather, to keep me company and to give me your fantastic suggestions, your comments. We love hearing from you guys. So if you have questions, don't forget, you can drop your questions right down here in the comment section. I was looking for the comment there. I was getting a bit confused and I was looking for the comment. There it is. You can drop them right down here in the comment section. We will answer them at the top, well, about the 45-minute mark, let's say. I was going to say the top of the hour, but no, we've got an hour together. We're going to answer the questions about the 45-minute mark. So if you have questions, drop them at any point. I will star them up and I'll make sure that we get to as many of them as we possibly can. Also, a couple of ways you can help us keep the lights on, literally and figuratively. You can do the following. You can go to the link down below, which is where you go to get your GI Plus subscription. Your GI Plus subscriptions are what enable us to keep doing these streams. So if you want to support what we're doing here, consider signing up for a GI Plus subscription. You get a wealth of fantastic lessons in exchange. You get everything from fusion with Tom Quayle through to country with Andy Wood. You get courses from myself on things like modes, expressiveness, melody and phrasing, picking technique, shred, all that sort of stuff. We've also got a great course that is, I guess, kind of flew under the radar for a little while. It's called Technique Hot Fixes, which is 10 instant wins for your guitar playing, if that makes any sense. It's a fabulous course. There's loads of them out there. We also have courses from the likes of Andy James, from Rick Graham, from who else do we have? Giorgio Cerci, Sam Bell, you name it. We have so many great lessons. Go to the link down below, GI Plus, and grab your subscription today. It helps us a great deal, but other ways you can help us out if you want to help us keep doing what we're doing here is you can give us a thumbs up on whatever platform you're watching on. You can share this with your guitar playing friends, and of course you can drop us comments because the algorithm does love some comments. Speaking of comments, let's just check in with the comment section, see how everybody's doing. Want to quickly highlight one from our friend Jason Carter, who is a recent member of our streaming community, but very, very welcome. Good to have you on board, Jason. And Jason says, the melodic course is excellent. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. That took a lot of putting together, as I'm sure you can imagine. It's a huge topic, man. It's not something that is terribly easy to teach, let's say, but that's probably why there aren't that many courses out there on that sort of subject, because it's not an easy win for a teacher, but I think it's a very, very important subject that needs looking at, and I'm really glad you're enjoying the course. So let's see who we've got. Marcin was first through the door at, what time was that? 18 minutes past 5 p.m. UK time. That is wild. Marcin, great to have you. It would not be a stream without you. We've had one or two that Marcin's missed and they felt somewhat like there was something missing, let's say. So, hey, man, it's really great to have you on board. Daryl Queen is here. Daryl's good to see you. I'm willing to wager you slay both gigs, dude. This will be Marcin and his gigs. Fantastic. Yeah, Marcin's joined a band. The pictures look very exciting. Looking forward to seeing some videos. We're into that. I know it probably won't happen, but a blues lesson seems like a good video to bust out that Maybach you teased a demo of on Instagram, Nick. Well, that is a fabulous guitar, let me tell you. So, we met the guys at Maybach Guitars at NAMM this year, and they were one of the absolute standouts from my perspective. I think they just brought this incredible package of these wonderful vintage guitars. I would have been quite happy to take one home with me, but they were all spoken for. They'd all been sold. And then Tony, who's the main man, came down to GI Studios. We've done an interview with him. That's coming in the not too distant future. We also have reviews of not one, not two, but three Maybachs, including the Stradivari, which is the Strat type that you saw me demoing on my Instagram. They're coming in an upcoming edition of Guitar Interactive magazine as well, and they are fantastic. So I'm looking forward to you guys seeing that. I had a lot of fun demoing them. So yeah, really, really great guitars. And if you want a shock, right, let me tell you, I will say first of all as well, these are custom shop quality instruments. Go and look at the price, especially if you live in the UK or you live in the European Union. You will be astonished at how little these guitars go for, considering they're handmade with like hand relic jobs and everything. Unbelievable. There's a bit of a waffle on the Maybach thing as well. Of course, we can't fail to show some love for our friends at Paul Reed Smith. You guys know my heart belongs to PRS. So Dara Queen says, thanks man, time for that PRS in action for sure. You got a gorgeous guitar there, man. And as Dara Queen rightly points out, it is not going to let you down. These guitars have never let me down. They're just it. They just work, man. They're great. So who else do we have in the house? PJ is here. Says, a little early for me, but what the hell. Hi, Nick and all. I learned and applied much of last week's session to good effect. Even as our worst critics, I smiled at what I played. Cheers, Nick. Well, that is just the best kind of comment. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that. That is exactly what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give you guys little wins that you can use in your playing, and you can take and you can start to apply and, you know, make it so that you can enjoy your own playing that little bit more. Because if you're enjoying it, chances are an audience is enjoying it too. But it also means that, I mean, ultimately we do this because we love it. You know, if we were here to get like rich and famous, we'd probably be doing, I don't know, crypto or something. Who knows? I don't know the route to fame and fortune. I just know that I love playing the guitar, and I'm guessing you do too. And if you're playing a little bit better and enjoying your playing more, then I feel like we've won. So thank you very much for that, man. Thanks for sharing that. I really do appreciate it. That is very, very cool. Marcin, what kind of gigs do you got coming? Are they club dates, bar gigs, festivals? If you guys are gigging, by the way, if you've got any exciting stuff coming up, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. And don't forget, post some content on your social media or share it in our Facebook group, which is the Guitar Interactive Live Stream Hub. If you go searching for that, Guitar Interactive Live Stream Hub, you will find us and you will get, you know, you'll be able to share your videos, you'll be able to see other people's videos, hopefully. And if you're posting it on social, posting it on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, remember to tag me, because I love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. Chris Brown always tags me, and I love watching them. Just the best. Who else do we have anyway? Sacred Godslayer is here. It is good to see you. Who else do we have? Timothy Appling is in the house. Timothy, great to see you. Still 38 degrees Celsius in Italy. My goodness. It'll be another guitarless lesson for me. I don't blame you, man. Stay out of the sun. Stay cool if you can. If there is a body of water you can get into and still watch this, then I would suggest doing that. That is 100 degrees in my language, says Timothy Appling, and very hot in any language for sure. Read about the heat wave happening in Europe this summer. Is the heat the reason you're not strapping on a guitar? I'd imagine as much, to be honest. Now the heat wave is it hasn't reached us here in the UK. It is still tipping down here, but I can speak certainly for the northeast of England, but England and the UK as a whole, we are not equipped to deal with heat, both in terms of our disposition. We generally start to cook in the heat, but also the buildings that we have, they just trap heat like crazy. So yeah, man, I like the heat, but I'm glad that we're not part of that, and I feel for our European brethren and our American brethren and sisters as well, who are suffering through it. So yeah, if you're enduring the heat, stay safe. Anyway, Larry Warren is here. Larry, it is good to have you on board. Fog Cornish is here. Good evening, friends. New goal for me, understanding jazz chords. Interesting. Okay, well, actually, funny enough you should mention that, because a little bit of an understanding of how this sort of stuff works in a blues context is a very good way to dip your toe into the jazz thing, if that makes sense. So maybe today's stream will sort of point you in the right direction for this sort of stuff. We do have a bunch of great content on this in GI Plus, by the way. A particular favorite of mine is The Art of Jazz Soloing with Lewis Turner. say that again, The Art of Jazz Soloing with Lewis Turner. It's a really fabulous course. Bit of a sleeper course, let's say, but it is so good. Dara Queen says, I went to uni for jazz guitar like 2 decades ago. I'm still exploring the same topic myself. Same, right? I studied jazz, got my degree, and, you know, I enjoy it. I understand it, can't play it. It's a bit like being able to read a language, but not do the accent, if that makes sense. So, you know, it's like if I understood, I don't understand Spanish, but let's say I do understand Spanish, but I spoke it with a Geordie accent. That's what it sounds like when I play jazz. I'm playing the right notes, but the accent is wrong. And I think that's a big part of the thing, but it's definitely something you should look into though, because it spills over into so many other musical pursuits, is having a bit of a jazz grounding. So that's cool. We like that. Glad to hear you playing at gigs. Maybe you can post a piece of a song sometime to YouTube. Even though most of us are thousands of miles apart, this GI group feels like family. You know what? You hit the nail on the head, Timothy. That is really, really cool of you to say. I appreciate that. I love our little community here. It's a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. So yeah, post some videos. We'd love to see it. Mark Crandall says, hello Nick, hello Shredders and future Shredders. Hopefully everybody's doing well. I'm doing good. Sacred Godslayer is suffering with chronic muscle inflammation. It's not the best situation to play for sure. If you are suffering, rest up. The guitar will be there for you when you're feeling better. We've got some recommendations of that. Kim has assured me that he's not watching from somewhere sunny today. I'm trying to paint this picture of him as an international man of mystery, but he's like, nope, I'm in the southeast and it's tipping down, which is true. Not the exact words he used, but certainly the words that are not going to get us demonetized on YouTube. Anyway, who else do we have? Let's quickly see if we've got any other friends in. Cranker Tom is here. Hello, Fretball friends around the globe, and also some Dutch words that I do not understand. Very thrilled about the topic, but the Wi-Fi situation here suggests I better catch it on YouTube later. Stick with us if you can, man. If not, don't worry, it'll be here on the playback. Steve McDee's here. Good to have you, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Rory Lisbon is here. Jason Carter, we've already said hello to, but Jason Carter from Stuttgart, Germany. Jason, good to see you. Mike Seedorf is here. Rick Elliott is here. Cowcat is in the house. David Yates is here. David, it's good to see you. Mainly been playing UFO this weekend. Fantastic album, by the way. Very, very cool. And one of the best vibratos in rock is Michael Schenker. Very in time, which is an interesting one. We've got some recommendations for Daryl Queen. Daryl, I'm going to back out and find this comment real quick. Daryl Queen says, looking forward to this lesson, hoping Nick gets into some outside arpeggios to help colour the sound over the 4 and 5 chords. Well, we are going to touch on that for sure. And certainly some transition arpeggios we can use to get between our chords. We'll get to that, but not right away. That'll be a little bit later on. But a very, very good one. And we have some recommendations for Danny Marvin has some suggestions on this subject for Scott Henderson altered sounds for the blues. Scott Henderson, fabulous, just like the guy for this sort of stuff. Who else do we have in the house? Very, very quickly, Chris Brown is here. Keep tagging me in them videos, man. I love to see them. He's been working on some Kirk Fletcher, some Josh Smith stuff. Those guys are masters at this sort of thing. We'll get onto that for sure. Tom Dorsey is here. Tom, I think might be a first-time commenter. I'm not sure. Tom, it's good to have you on board, man. Thank you so much for joining us. It is 3 p.m. in South Georgia, and it's beautiful but really hot. I can imagine, man. I can imagine. If it's any consolation, it's tipping down. It ain't good here, but you know, at least we're not dying in the heat. My friend Craig is in. Craig, it's good to see you. Who else do we have? Just very quickly, make sure I haven't left anybody out. Mustache Metal is here, back after a couple of weeks off. That's okay, man. We'll let you off. It's good to see you. Response Audio is here. Lovely to have you on board. And very, very quickly, let's just say hello to my buddy, John Page. John is watching. John is a very good bad boy. If you know where that's from, then you by all means drop it in the comments. Ergo Hogg is here. Ergo, it is good to see you. Let's get into the meat of the session, which is arpeggios and the blues. And we're going to begin by establishing some basic principles, which is, what do we mean by blues? What do we mean by arpeggios? So let's start very quickly with the blues in question. We're going to go to a clean sound for this. I think I might have a bit of slapback on this, which is, yeah, it's kind of blues appropriate. We'll run with that. So very, very quickly, let's talk about the blues we're playing over today. Our blues is in the key of A, and it is a very typical 1-4-5 blues. I've elected not to do anything weird over this. We haven't got any quick changes. We haven't got any 2-5s, any backdoor anything. If you're confused by what any of that means, don't worry. We've gone with the simplest blues backing track I had access to, which is this one with the horns in the key of A. So what we're dealing with here, we're in the key of A. If we were to take our alphabet and we would count from the letter A through to the letter G, we would get A, would be 1, B would be 2, C something would be 3, D would be 4, E would be 5, F something would be 6, G would be 7. By the time we get back to A, we could call it 8, but we could also call it 1. So if we were to play 1, 4, and 5 from that alphabet, we'd get an A, we get a D, and we get an E. So if we just play our blues using just root notes, we could play E, there's our A, there's 1, then D, back to A, that will be 4 and then 1. Then we can go 5, which is E, D, back to A. And there's our 5, with some other notes to pass between that we're not actually super concerned about. So we can consider our blues to be a 1, 4, and a 5 in this instance. So when I say 1 chord, I mean an A chord. When I say 4 chord, I mean D. When I say 5 chord, I mean E. Now, you guys probably already know this, but just in case there's anybody out there going, never learned a 12-bar blues, now you have. So we'll talk about the structure of that in a minute. It's arranged in a 12-bar fashion, which is where the 12-bar blues thing comes from. Don't worry about exactly what goes where. We'll talk about that in a bit. So in your typical dominant blues, which is what we're playing here, where it gets its name from is that every chord is a dominant 7 chord. Now, typically, if we were playing this in a major kind of setting, we could play major chords over each. We would expect to find A major 7, D major 7, and E dominant 7. Back to A major 7. The blues is somewhat unique in that it doesn't do that. It does the following. We get an A7 rather, get there in the end, an A7, a D7, and then when we get to our 5, we have another 7. So if we were to play through our chord progression, we could play A7, going up to D7. Don't worry if you don't know what these are. We'll get to that. A7, E7, D7, A7. And in some progressions, we also have an E7 at the end. We would call this 1, 4, and 5, but because we're playing blues, we assume that everything is a dominant 7. Now, in terms of dominant 7, what does that mean for us? Well, if we start with the idea that each one of these could be a major chord, which it could be, we could play a major arpeggio. And let's start with that, right? So if we start with a major arpeggio, let's begin with this one here. This is going to be our A major arpeggio to begin with. And what we get here is we get the following. We get fret number 7 on our D string, fret number 6 on our G string, fret number 5 on our B string, and also on our high E string. So once again, 7, 6, 5, 5. Now that sounds thus. This shape comes from this chord, which is an A bar chord using an E shape. We've played that loads of times. You can also think about it as the first F chord you ever learned, the one that didn't hurt, but advanced up here to be an A. Easy enough, piece of cake, right? So we can begin here with this A major arpeggio. What makes it an A major? Well, what makes it an A major is this is an A, this is also an A. So if we took those same notes in that same shape and we positioned it up here to get a D, we could play that over our D chord or our 4 chord. If we go a little further up, we can get up here to an E, which is our, surprise, surprise, our E chord. Very quickly, let's do a quick improvisation using just these notes. I'm going to tell you when to change. So it's the same shape. A has your first finger on fret 1, D has your first finger on fret 10, and then it's fret number 12 with your first finger for the 5 chord, which is an E. And I'll shout out which fret to play to make it nice and easy. So we'll start on fret number 5. I'm going to go like this. Let's go to 10. 5, 12, 10, 5. Piece of cake. Now, it might have sounded a little bit pedestrian and maybe a little bit old-fashioned, but we can't deny that that sounds in. It works, right? Works. Reminiscent of the great Buddy Holly, says PJ. For sure. There was a time when that was the thing for soloing, was this kind of business of playing just triads. And it sounds cool, right? Especially if you have the slap back on. And so on and so forth. The more exciting flavours came a little bit later on, but it definitely has that 50s kind of sound to it. Now, let's expand this a bit further. So those are some major arpeggios, right? All we really need to turn this into a dominant 7 arpeggio, which is where things get a bit more interesting, is we need to take our major arpeggio and include, surprise, surprise, a flat 7, which is where our dominant arpeggio comes from. It's a major arpeggio with a flat 7. So in this instance, what we get is we get 7 on the D string, 6 on the G string, 5 on the B string, but also 8 on the B string. 5, but also 8. This is the flat 7th interval. We get 1, 3, 5, flat 7. And that's where this comes from. Oh. Little fluff there, but you get the gist. Now, what's interesting about that is I managed to play through that using the arpeggios, broadly just these particular arpeggios here, without the backing track, but it kind of sounded like the backing track was there, if that makes sense. Now, this is actually a skill all of its own, is playing over something like a blues, but trying to make it sound as if the chord changes are there when they aren't there. But we can try this together. So if we take the same arpeggio shape, which was this one right here, I'll show you in the close-up cam, this guy right here, but we also include this note here, and we move that around in the same fashion. We've got what we might consider to be outlining the changes of your blues thing. So it's a nice way of kind of interjecting a little bit of, I guess, a bit of a really inside playing into your blues stuff, right? We've got a lot of love for Buddy Holly, understandably, right? One of the all-time greats. How can you not love Buddy Holly? Anyway, and those glasses too, man. And, you know, one of the first guys that was playing a Strat on TV, which is pretty cool. We like a bit of that. So, great songs, great dude by all accounts, tragic loss, and also sounded a bit like what we're playing today, which is a big win. So let's go back to our progression. Once again, I'll shout out the fret for your first finger to be on. So it's an A chord, a D chord, an E chord. You guys know this already, but let's try playing this sort of stuff. Let's see what we get. Take a turn here, let's go 5. So your arpeggio on 5. So that's fret number 5 with your first finger. Let's go with the first finger on fret 10. Back down to fret 5. Up to fret 12. 10. 5. Nice. Now, You can take as long as you want after this stream is done to get over this sort of stuff, so don't be afraid to stop and rewind this as well if you want. If you feel like there's something you missed, obviously we want to stay live, but if there's something that you missed, you want to rewind, that's totally okay too. Don't worry, there is a button to bring you back up to the live speed if you so desire. So anyway, we've got that and we've established what's going on there. Let's talk about why this works. So the reason this works is because what we're doing when we hit the arpeggios of a particular chord is we are choosing the notes that are most in keeping with what's going on with the backing. And this is going to give us the most, I guess, the most stable sound, the most in sound for whatever it is that we're trying to play. Now, blues is an interesting medium because it's about balancing sounds that are very in with sounds that are very out. Now, an example of an out sound might be something like this. If we played... Now, those sounds are what we call out because they don't necessarily line up with the chord that we're playing over. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that, you know, we maybe want to treat them with a bit of caution, let's say. Now, in terms of what is out, one of the best ways to be out, if this makes sense, is if all of the notes in a particular arpeggio are very, very in, then it kind of makes sense that all the notes of the next arpeggio up are very, very out. So in this case, if I was to play a B flat, over this A, we get a very, very outside sound. Let me show you what's going on here. And I'll show you why this is kind of interesting, because you may want to use this in your own playing, depending on how you decide to apply it. So if I literally play the same arpeggio up a fret, what's what we get? Catch how kind of like out there that was? I'm going to go to a dirty sound so you can hear it with a bit more sustained. So we go here. Let's go. So there, that sounds like a really strange line, but it kind of works, it kind of flies, and we'll get into why it flies in a second. But what we're dealing with there is essentially I'm playing the arpeggios that are next door to the ones that I'm trying to play, and I'm kind of sliding in and out with them. By sliding, I don't mean sliding physically, I mean just like moving in and out of them and kind of going, okay, now we're in, now we're out, now we're in, now we're out. You can actually do this in a fun way within your arpeggio in the blues, though. So let's talk about some of that stuff. So here's a fun thing to play with. So we've talked about this idea of this dominant 7 being our in notes in a given blues setting. Well, there are some other notes that we can play that are a little less in, but also sound really cool. The first and most obvious one is to play this note here. Now, we've all been taught that over an A blues, we should play A minor pentatonic. And that's true, it works, it sounds great. But what we can do here is we can take this note from our A minor pentatonic, that's the flat 3, we can play that in with our arpeggio. As a reminder, our arpeggio is this. If we throw in this G, we can get some really cool and very interesting sounds. Now, a quick note on this. When we play this, we almost never, in blues at least, go from the normal third to the minor third. We almost never go from here to here. If we start here, we can go here, But by the time we get here, we can't go here. That's not how it works. We don't go like this. It just doesn't have quite the same musical impact. We want this. Now, let's play with that as an idea. That's going to work really neatly, not just here, but also here and here. Now, at the minute, we're doing this by kind of this big blocky sort of movement, where we're just doing this one arpeggio shape and moving it around. That's fine, but we can also start to play this in position, which is something we'll talk about as we go a bit further with this. So, very quickly, let's start here. Take a turn. Let's go with number 5, fret number 5. Same arpeggio as before, but we have the option to go from first finger to second finger on the G string. Let's go to fret 10. Same deal, same options. Back to 5. Up to 12. 10. Back to 5. And so on and so forth. Now, that would be an example of how you would use this sort of stuff with a dominant 7 arpeggio, but we don't have to play a dominant 7 arpeggio. There's another arpeggio that's open to us here, which is a major 6 arpeggio. You might be going, the hell is a major 6 arpeggio? Well, let me show you. Major 6 arpeggio is this major arpeggio, but with this, which is the flat 7, replaced with this, which is the major 6. So what we get here is we get this business like that. Now this is really interesting. So if we start by playing 7 on the D string, we have 5 to 6 on our G string. Really, we don't have to play the 5 to 6. We can just play 6 if we wanted. We have 5 on our B string, but instead of going to 8, let's go to 7. And then we'll finish on 5. We get this. Now that in itself sounds like a blues lick you've heard 1,000 times. We've all played it a million times. But we can also move it refer to our stream on acoustic blues for those tricks. We did a stream on acoustic blues a little while ago, which is comping blues. All kind of leads into this sort of stuff. Now, we've got some good observations here. Steve Ford says A Dorian again. It's A Dorian so long as we don't play the major third, but as soon as we play the major third, it becomes sort of a blend between Dorian and mixed Lydian, but also kind of neither. So you could think about it as A Dorian for sure. But it's a little different. Now, here's a fun one, right? Daryl Queen says, I love that neutral third that lives in between the major and minor third. And when you kind of take that minor and bend it sharp, but not quite an entire half step, what he's referring to is this sound, which is a really cool sound. It's kind of somewhere in between this note and this note. Now, playing between here and here is what happens when instruments that are unable to bend, like pianos, for example, when they all, I'm trying to think of other instruments, mainly pianos, but when those sort of guys have to get that sort of sound, they do it with this kind of movement. And it sort of evokes an old-fashioned kind of thing that is, I guess, maybe a little bit. It does sound kind of cool and kind of like 50s, I guess, but also we're starting to kind of get more into that blues sort of thing. I think it's because of the kind of musical setting and the kind of people that were playing these kind of ideas, but that will work really, really well. So what have we got here? We got this. And then we've got its neighbours up here on 10, up here on 12, and so on and so forth. Now, these are all with one arpeggio. So let me show you what's going on here. I'm going to go back to a dirty sound so we can hear this with a little more sustain. This major 6 is going to go like this. About this, it's a bit of fun, but the way I like to think about this, when you're playing this sort of thing, I tend to think of the dominant 7 as like a sour kind of sound, like a mean sound, and I tend to think of the major 6, which we have here, as kind of a sweet sound. So that's let's turn the delay off. That's a little bit annoying. Turn it off, I said. So the major 6. It's kind of a very sweet sound, whereas that dominant 7 is a little meaner. Now, what this is all kind of hinting at, this is a bit of fun for you, but if we actually dissect what's going on here in terms of the, I guess in terms of the theory behind this, is what we're taking a major arpeggio, and for the major 6, we're mapping kind of a major pentatonic to it, which is this. And then for this dominant 7, we're mapping a minor pentatonic to it. So you might think about the dominant 7 as having something of the minor pentatonic to it, whereas the major 6 has something of the major pentatonic to it. You can also play these up one string and play them in all sorts of different positions. They start to sound really interesting. One of my favourite tricks is to take the major 6 and slide it up one string. Ooh. Missed there. Let's try it again. Sounds very, very vocal. Sounds great with a slide. It's kind of another Derek Trucksy kind of thing. Somebody mentioned Derek Trucks earlier. Mike Seedorf mentioned Derek Trucks. It's very much that sort of thing. Now, that major 6 sounds really, really sweet for that reason. Sounds pretty cool. We can start to use the slightly more sour dominant 7 in a very interesting way as well, which we'll get to, which is going to maybe sound a little bit more outside. It's a bit more like what Daryl Queen's asking for. We're going to get to that. But for the time being, let's just play that major 6 and let's contrast it against the dominant 7. A quick reminder of what we're doing here. Major 6 is this shape. So still this, but with this note thrown in, which is 7th fret on the B string. If we take the same arpeggio and we throw in fret number 7 instead, we go from this to this. Make sense? That's our major 6. There's our dominant 7. We also have this lovely kind of like bitter sounding, mean sounding flat third that we can throw in as well. So on and so forth. Let's contrast against the sweet sounding major 6 and the mean sounding dominant 7. Here we go. if we get a little bit further out on this, what we can start to do is we can start to play, which is what I was doing at the end there, we can start to take these same ideas of these arpeggios, but we just play them in one position, or we can play them so that they kind of overlap with each other in position. An example of that, and I'll be necessarily quick about this, but an example of that might be if we played our A dominant 7 here. If we played our D dominant 7 here, and our E dominant 7 here. Got a bit ahead of myself there, started playing some outside notes. There we can start to target notes like this one, which is in our E arpeggio, but isn't in our A. We can target this one, which is in the D dominant 7, but it's also in the the A major 6 rather, but with the addition of this cool passing tone. We're not going to be able to get into that today. I'll show you some more of those shapes. Maybe we'll continue this on next week, because I feel like this is quite good fun. So maybe we'll continue it on next week. But I'm going to show you what that might look like. Now, we've had a bit of a primer on that with these first few arpeggio shapes. Let's talk about what's going on here. And then I'll give you a bit of a win for the fusion types. So on and so forth. Now, again, not really expecting you guys necessarily to keep up with that. That's more like an example of what the next step is. But here's a fun little win for you fusion types. Now, if you've been kind of like keeping pace with us so far and going, got most of that, or got a good bit of that, I'll maybe need to catch it on the replay, that's fine. Remember, the replay is here for you. This will be on our YouTube channel if you need to go back over any of this sort of stuff, especially in preparation for next week, where we're probably actually going to continue this. I had something else planned, but we'll maybe continue this on a little bit, because I think this is quite good fun. What we can do is, because we're playing dominant chords, we can use... Well, dominant chords are capable of withstanding tension, probably better than any other chord type, which is where the venerable altered dominant comes from. Now, what we can start to do here is, if we really want to make things sound super spicy, especially if we're about to resolve to somewhere, we'll talk about the resolution thing in a second, is we can play a dominant 7 arpeggio a tritone away. Let's talk about where we might find those. So, here's some fun places to look for them. So first of all, let's talk about where it's going to be over our A. Here, we get an E flat. Very, very fusiony. Now, E flat's going to work real nice there. If we talk about where we might get it over our D, it's going to be an A flat, which will give us this. Again, very fusion-tastic. If we play over our E, the tritone away is B flat. Now, here's a little fun trick for you, right? Because we have A flat and we have B flat, we can go to an A flat over our A, right? We can go to an A flat over the A. We can also go to B flat over the A, and it'll just sound like we're pretending we've got onto a very tense version of the D or a very tense version of the E. Let me show you what I'm talking about here, right? It's a little bit wild, but it does kind of fly. So check this out. Trick for you, right? Because Daryl Queen's asking this, saying finding the tritone is one thing, finding the way back out is the real trick, for sure. But here's a cool trick, right? If you're using this in the way it is traditionally done, Greg Koch territory there for sure, sometimes you just have to be bold and just do some really weird and wacky stuff. And I'm trying not to play too quick with these because I really want you to hear the quality of what's going on there. But I'm not just playing the arpeggio, I'm playing it as if it were an arpeggio the way you play it in blues. So it's not just this. It's time for some outside. Instead, I'm playing. I think that's part of Greg's thing. That sort of silly stuff. We love a bit of Greg Koch. But here's a fun thing anyway, going back to Daryl Queen's thing. So if you're playing the tritone and you're resolving to a fifth away, which is kind of what we should be doing really, or resolving from 5 to 1 rather. So if we go here, and we go to here, the tritone is only a semitone up from where we're trying to end up. So if I play this over the last bar of our blues, going from E to in this case A. I had to think about that for a second. I don't know what happened. Just got my brain went all blank. It's going to give us a little semitone move from here. That's literally what it's going to be. So we find the tritone and then just keep playing but move down by a semitone and you'll get there. Same is also true if we were to go from a tritone of A, which is E flat, to our D. We're just up a semitone. So answering Daryl Queen's thing, generally if you found the tritone, you're playing that dominant arpeggio, just go down a semitone and when it's time to resolve, and you'll probably get it. Beg your pardon, that's allergies getting the better of me because the pollen is still hot, even though it's freezing cold here. Let me give you a quick demonstration on this. Again, this is a little bit off, but that's fine. We'll run with it. So, here we go. Let's do the tritone here. Grow some space. Here we go. So, a fun way to get that, by the way, just real quick, that little tritone escape thing, is to take whatever part of the lick you're playing and just play that bit of the lick again down a semitone, and then, you know, then carry on your merry way. So we do this, for example. Don't worry about that exact lick, but this middle bit. And then finish the lick as you were. So the lick would normally be this. We do this. so on and so forth. Great fun, all the fun in the fair. Guys, I feel like there's a lot of mileage in this, so maybe we will carry this on next week. I wasn't actually intending on doing that. I was intending on going on to a minor blues thing next week, but I feel like we have more stuff to do in our major blues. So here's what I'm going to do for you, or rather in our dominant blues. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you guys to take a week and just get yourself familiar with these concepts that we've been playing with, right? Just these concepts we've been playing with here, so that you've got a bit of an informed basis to start from when we come at this next week with some slightly more involved stuff. What I'm also going to encourage you to do is I'm going to encourage you to try and find some ways of playing both these dominant 7 and these major 6 things that we have here, right? I'm going to encourage you to find ways of playing those in closer positions. And we'll talk more about that for real next week. In the meantime, we're going to go to your questions. So if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments. Before we do, though, I just want to take a quick minute and show you this. If you're wondering how you can get the most out of your expressive playing, we've got a great course for that on expressive techniques. Now, this is another one of your GI Plus courses. It is only available to GI Plus members. Nobody else gets it. So GI Plus members only. Check this out. When we come back, we'll be answering your questions. Hi guys, Nick Jennison with Guitar Interactive and GI Plus. Does your playing sound like this? When really you'd like it to sound like this? Now, the difference between these two examples are not the notes that are being played, but rather the way the notes are being played. I'm sure you've heard this before. Guitar players will say to you, it's not what you play, it's how you play it. And when it comes to creating interesting, emotive, and musical sounding guitar lines, that is very much the case. And in this course, Expressive Techniques Part 1, we aim to equip you with the tools to sound more musical, more emotive, more interesting, and ultimately more expressive on the guitar. And we are going to do this by exploring the 3 principal left-hand expressive techniques, which are slides, bends, and vibrato. I'm going to show you the mechanics of these techniques and how you can execute them cleanly, efficiently, and reliably. I'll also give you some exercises to help develop these techniques, and we're also going to discuss some musical applications, how you might use these techniques in your own playing. We're going to go into great depth with that stuff, and I'm also going to give you a solo study, a piece of music I've prepared, and I'm going to encourage you and kind of guide you through the process of applying expression to an otherwise expressionless and bare sounding piece of guitar playing. So at the end of this course, you are going to be able to take otherwise uninteresting and fairly dry pieces of music and turn them into expressive, colourful, musical lines. And you're also going to be able to take this and apply it to your own playing or to other people's music that maybe you're playing and you want to express in your own way. This is Expressive Techniques Part 1. My name is Nick Jennison for Guitar Interactive and GI Plus. I hope you'll join me. I will see you in there. So there you go, guys. That's been a look at Expressive Techniques Part 1. Just want to highlight this very quickly. It's been up the whole time, but I'm going to highlight it anyway. This is from our friend Darryl Queen. Says, so I just take a small segment of the outlick and push it back a half step instead of repeating the larger phrase. That is definitely one way to do it. And I feel like that's a nice way to thread this sort of stuff through a lick. if that makes sense. Jason Carter is asking, is this subject matter covered in any courses in GI Plus? Yes, it is. Several courses, as a matter of fact. Now, you will find some of this in Lewis Turner's Back to Basics and also in the Art of Jazz Soloing. These are really great examples of this sort of stuff. But we also have a little bit of it, pardon me, in Ian Simo's Slide Guitar for Standard Tuning. Now, I've been taking some of Ian's lessons, been doing a bunch of that. I use this stuff, right? This is not just stuff where I'm like, you should do this, but I don't need to. That's not how it works, right? I've watched this stuff myself. And a lot of the slide guitar vocabulary that we tend to use if you're playing a standard tuning is just these arpeggios. It's the same arpeggio here. Same thing, right? Literally the same thing. I'm just playing it with a slide, or trying to. This guitar is definitely not the right guitar to play slide on, by the way. The action is slammed, and that's how we like it. But even still. So real quick, right? Just want to highlight this one as well. This is a great comment from Sacred Godslayer. What about seeing the 5 chord as a 1 flat 5 or sharp 11? That is, you can definitely look at it that way. I think what I would probably be more inclined to do is I'd be more inclined, if you're doing this with the 5 chord at the end of a progression, to see it as a, like, kind of, I wouldn't call it a sharp 1, it'd be a flat 2 dominant, a flat 2 altered dominant, which can be flat 2, flat 5, flat 2 chord with a flat 5 rather. That would work, so you can get here. And have it resolve pretty well. That's going to work. That's a nice thing to do. That's probably the way I'd maybe look at that, unless I'm missing something. I might have misinterpreted that, but that's definitely a way of approaching that, I think. That would be another example of this tritone substitution thing, which is kind of what we're touching on here. So I know you guys love a bit of that sort of stuff, but we will get a little bit more in depth with that. But I definitely wanted to make sure that folks who don't have much of a grounding in this don't miss out. So I want to make sure there's something for everybody here. We will get more deep with this as we go, I promise. So what else do we have? Johnny Highland, a great suggestion. Johnny Highland's a fabulous player. Use this sort of stuff that we're talking about all the time. You'd be amazed how common this sort of thing is. So guys, once again, we have run very, very long. Just want to finish on this comment. This is my buddy John. He is a very good bad boy. If you guys know what video that's from, comment down below. If you don't, just Google "I am a very good bad boy" and prepare to hear the most amazing song that you're ever going to hear in your entire life. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Nick Jennison from Guitar Interactive GI Plus. Jason suggested to make a Discord channel. Would you guys at GI do that? I can certainly ask. Can't make any promises, but it is a very good suggestion. So listen, in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for having me. We're going to touch on this one. Half step slide up into chord tones a la piano, like this. We're going to finish with a little bit of that. For you guys that are interested in doing that, all we're doing here, take our arpeggio, move down by a semitone, slide in. Fun things to be had. Let's finish on that. In the meantime, see you guys next week. playing up this track. I love butchering blues with all sorts of shred nonsense. In the meantime, thanks for having me. See you guys next week. My name's Nick Jennison, and it's a pleasure to introduce to you GI Plus, the brand new lesson platform brought to you by Guitar Interactive. We've assembled a team of the best players and educators in the world to bring you exclusive lessons covering everything from metal to blues to fusion and everything in between. Want to level up your shred chops? Check out How to Play Fast by Andy James. Or how about sweep picking with Rick Graham? Or maybe country's more your bag? Well, how about a full-length exclusive country guitar course from Andy Wood? Interested in learning how to play over changes? Well, members get access to hours of exclusive lessons from fusion maestro Tom Quayle. Or maybe you want your playing to sound more soulful? Well, who better than Chris Buck to show you how it's done? Or perhaps you want to learn the secrets of the masters. Well, members get access to over 60 feature-length tech sessions where our tutors painstakingly decode the styles of players like David Gilmour, Eddie Van Halen, John Petrucci, Larry Carlton, Slash, Tosin Abasi, Paul Gilbert, and many more. You get all this along with exclusive live webinars, free backing tracks, competitions, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for GI Plus today.